The inland Northwest is well known for wheat, wine grapes, and cattle ranching. But from the late 1800s to the 1950s, this region also supported a robust sheep industry. While a small number of sheep were brought to this area by early European settlers, it wasn't until the 1860s that sheepmen began moving their herds from coastal Washington eastward. In the year 1880, Eastern Washington produced 84% of the state's wool, which was sold to the mills in Pendleton and Portland, Oregon, with the rest shipped to the East Coast. By 1905, sheep accounted for 85% of the livestock that grazed in the Umatilla National Forest. At that time, over 275,000 sheep shared access to this free grazing land. Experienced sheepmen from France, England, Scotland, and the Basque region of Spain moved to the inland Northwest, where sheep operations were quickly becoming prosperous ventures. Some of these businesses were owned by the Blanc, Burlingame, Davin, DeRue, Drumheller, Gangay, McGregor, and Joso families.
At one time we had lots of sheep ranching here. Big sheep ranching, 1,500 head and a head of sheep. My family were all from France. They were told to come to two places, either Walla Walla Valley or Rock Springs, Wyoming. And that's the best place for the sheep. My granddad got a notice from his cousin who was up here, said, "This is the place to be for sheep. Lots of grass and lots of water, and it's a wonderful place. Come on up." And he decided that's where he wanted to be.
Sheep spend most of the day grazing, and the grassy hills and pastures in the Blue Mountains provided plenty of fodder. Sheep herders would drive their bands to different locations each season. In the autumn, they would head to lower elevations to spend the winter in sheltered pastures or valleys. In the early spring, the ewes would have their lambs. When the lambs were old enough, the sheep would start their journey to the summer range. On the way, they would stop at a shearing station where their wool was cut and sacked for shipping to the mills. The herd was then driven over highways and ferried across rivers to summer pastures at a higher elevation.
They had them on the other side of the Snake River, and they would bring them over here and take them up to the Blue Mountains for summer feed, and take them right down Rose Street and through town that way. When you have a band of sheep, you have to have a man take care of them, called a sheepherder. And when the sheepherder had his sheep around the ranch, he was fine. But when they went out, way out in the back of the ranch someplace, he had to have a place to cook and a place to eat and a place to sleep and get in and out of the rain. So he had this camp wagon. It's called a sheepherder's wagon here at the museum. But this is what the sheepherder lived in. And my father and his brother built it. And they could pull it with a jeep or horses or whatever was available.
Conservation efforts in response to overgrazing, plus the growth of wheat cultivation across the valley, left sheep and cattle ranchers battling for grazing access. Except for wartime demand for wool, drops in market value and the low price of mutton had most sheepmen moving on to other ventures by the 1950s.
All of a sudden, it wasn't productive to raise sheep, and so the sheepmen here went out of business. They're much smaller now, the few that do have them. I say, well, I've always had good clothes on my back, good food on my table, and good roof over my head, and may I never get bigger than the band of sheep that gives it to me.